So CBCS has revealed their new label design, and we got to talk about it. Stay tuned. What's going on, comic friends? It's Ryan the Colossus Collector, and thank you once again for stopping by my channel. So as I said off the top, CBCS has released their new label design, a long-awaited, long-requested label design for their slabs, and it came out a couple weeks ago, and from what I've seen across the comic community since it dropped, has been a lot of negativity. You know, I saw people say things like, why don't they hire a professional designer? It's so ugly. It's not for me. They had one job. My 6-year-old could design a better label. What the f***? Now, everyone's entitled to their opinion. And design, like anything creative, comic art, literature, classical art, it's all subjective. People have their tastes, and people are entitled to those tastes and those opinions. But personally, I think that the opinions about CBCS's labels are, best way to put it, slightly biased. And I personally, and not to toot my own horn, feel like I have a particular outlook on this label design from a more professional experience. I've worked in advertising design for almost 15 years. I went to school for graphic design. I've been designing things all through this period of time, my entire professional life, and I feel I have an eye and I have that experience, like I said, when it comes to good design versus bad design. And I really feel that CBCS basically couldn't win. They could have designed the most beautiful label of all time. They could have had one of the greatest designers the world has ever seen design this label, and you still would have had a similar reaction. And it's because people love CGC. They love the CGC label. CGC is the industry standard. It's the most valuable grading company in terms of when you get your book graded from CGC, it just has more desirability. It's what people have. It's what people collect. And I'm no different. I have maybe one CBCS graded slab in my collection, and it's not even on my wall. It's tucked away in a box. Partly because the book isn't that great, but it's also because I'm a CGC fan. I like their label better historically, and you know, I understand why people have that kind of outlook on this new label. But I think people are wrong when it comes to this new label design. And I want to take a look at this new label design, take a look at the CGC label, and I want to just talk to you a little bit about the two in comparison with one another and why I think that this negativity comes from a biased place. And like I said, you're entitled to your opinion. People can get what they want, like what they want. But I think the problem is more just stemmed overall that CBCS is a step or a bunch of steps behind CGC. And really what they need to do is work on other aspects of their business to bring themselves closer to CGC. And then I think you will have far less of a gap or a gap in opinion on the labels, because I think the CGC or the CBCS label design is actually quite good. So let's go through that now. So to start, let's take a look at this new label. So clearly CBCS has redesigned their label to get closer to the look of the CGC label that everybody likes. And one of the big things that everybody likes is the fact that On the CGC label, the grade is on a light background. It draws your eye to it, and it's kind of the most important thing that someone wants to see on a label. So now with this new design, you've got a really eye-catching grade area on the left side of the label. And then just to add a little bit more personality to the label design, to give also their label their own unique quality, they've added this sort of chevron arrow kind of design where the rest of the label kind of points at that grade number, drawing your eye even more towards the grade. And I think this was a clever, nice little touch to give them a little bit of a differentiation from CGC, and just kind of do something a little bit more creative with their label. The new design also has a new font, or as we like to call it in the design world, a new typeface. They've gone with a very vertical condensed font. This gives it just a different look, a different vibe to the CGC label, but it's still very legible when it's big. The smaller fonts are a little bit harder to read, but that's not supposed to be read from a distance anyways. Once you get the slab or the label in front of your face, you can clearly read the extra details of the book that's been graded. What this font actually does is it really creates a real symmetrical look to both the grade numbers and the words, the titling. It just kind of gives you a clean, very uniform look to the overall design. And it also, of course, matches the same font, same typeface that they use in their logo. And of course, they've kind of stuck with what I thought was the best part of their previous label, which was their logo embossed in this hollow foil style. This gives the label sort of an official look, similar to how CGC uses that hollow foil label or sticker. This kind of links to things like official gear or hats like MLB or NFL. They always come with those hollow foil stickers. It gives it that kind of official seal kind of feel and look to the label. But what I like about this compared to CGC is the fact that it is their logo, and it's literally embossed and printed onto the label, as opposed to looking like a sticker that's been affixed to the printed label after it's been printed. A little closer look at what the grade looks like on this new label design. Like I said, I like the detail of this arrow. I know some people don't like it, but I do think design-wise it is kind of nice, and how it draws your eye even more towards the grade, which is the most important item on the label itself. It's why you're getting your comics slabbed in the first place. And here's a closer look at that embossed hollow foil logo. Right underneath it, you can see the serial number. Some people might not like that the serial number is so small on the label. I think that's just a matter of preference. In terms of placement, I think it's nicely tucked out of the way. It's not an extra element that kind of clutters up the label. You know, if you want that serial number, it's still on the front to get it. But definitely like this embossed logo, always have from CBCS. It still gives that official feel to the label design, and it's part of the actual label as opposed to affixed like the CGC sticker is. And here's a closer look at this fun little design element that they added into the top line or top edge of the label. You can see their CBCS logo embossed into that darker blue. Just a fun little detail that's really only noticeable when you see it up close, but a nice element to just bring a little bit extra to the label design. So now this is where I think the new redesign really excels, and brings something different to the table that I think, in my opinion, CGC should just rip off, because it's a really nice idea, and I think it gives CBCS something that people would want that CGC does not have, and that is the different styles for a 9/9 grade and a 10 grade. I think the fact that getting a 10 with that black background with the gold number, or a 9/9 on the blue background, really makes this a more desirable label to get in those grades. Of course, those grades are hard to get, but I know now, if I was thinking I really want a 10 or a 9/9 grade in a book, I would start looking for it in a CBCS label, because I think these labels stand way apart from CGC, especially the 10. That gold on black is so sharp, and really pops. It draws my eye right to it, and it just gives the label and the fact that it got a 10 or a 9/9 a little more gravitas. It makes it just give more presence on your shelf, on your display wall. I think it's a really smart idea from CBCS to differentiate the labels with this much of a visual difference. Really cool idea, and would not be surprised if they really see a lot of success in getting people to turn to CBCS for grading those super minty fresh brand new modern books. That's where they could potentially see a real uptick in their business. People trying to get those 10 or 9/9 graded books in CBCS new labels. I think that was a really smart play, and maybe they'll see some traction and some success with this new design. Okay, so now let's take a look at this new CBCS redesign label next to the true and trusted and loved CGC label, and let's just do a little bit of a comparison and analysis between the two. Of course, I love the CGC label. All my slabs are CGC, as I said earlier, pretty much all of them. It's a clean label for the most part. It has clear information. The grade pops. The blue is a nice color, or whatever label color you get, yellow or purple or green, although we hate purple and green. The label looks good. But from a design standpoint, and looking at them side by side, the new CBCS label does look a little bit more modern, more designed, and has kind of a fresher look. Now, of course, like I said earlier, everybody has their preferences, and people are used to the CGC label. They love the CGC label. It's hard to embrace change. It's hard to embrace something new. I get that. I have those sorts of thoughts and feelings about many things in life. So I don't blame anybody for loving the CGC label and not liking the new one. But from a true design standpoint, I really think the CBCS label is a cleaner, better design label. There's less clutter on the new CBCS label. You don't have that barcodey thing at the bottom. Things are just nicely placed. I think the information is in a good spot, centered kind of in the label as opposed towards the bottom. And I don't think that's a bad thing, whether it's a bottom or center, but it works for the CBCS label being higher, more centered in the label, because then it lines up with that chevron, that arrow, which is good, just good design. The CBCS label has, I think the grade itself, the number, is just a cleaner look, and we can get into some of the problems I have with the CGC grade numbers, but as you can see, it sits very centered in its little area on the left side of the label. It's all clean, it's very uniform, whereas I find with the CGC label, those numbers, although they're clear and they serve their purpose of like seeing the grade well, they're a little clunky. I don't really like the numbers, the style of font typeface they've used for numbers, and they're also off center all the time, and we can go into that in a little bit. Also, you know, going back to the sticker on the CGC label, even in this example, for instance, the sticker is actually slightly askewed. It's a little crooked. It was added on after the fact. It's not printed onto the label or added to the label itself. It's just like a sticker. Someone slapped a sticker on it, which I think is a little bit messier. It looks a little bit more lazy, and it leaves you open to have a little bit of an off-centered or an askewed placement of the sticker on the label. I just think from a production standpoint, the new CBCS label is just cleaner and produced in a higher quality than the CGC label is in its current form. I will say with the CGC label, though, it does have a few things going for it. I think the blues are a little bit stronger on the CGC label. They're a little punchier than the one on the CBCS label, but that also could be because CBCS doesn't want to fully copy CGC. So for that reason, I do like the CGC label a little bit more in terms of just popping blue, but I also have to add in, there is a little bit of room for error between these two visuals, different photography, different exposure of the different shots of the labels. I think the only really true comparison can be made in person, holding the two labels side by side. So I would take the strength or the saturation of the color on these labels with a slight grain of salt, because the comparisons aren't perfect, the pictures aren't perfect. So this is the thing that actually kind of bugs me the most about the CGC label, and that is the numbers on the grades. I think they're kind of fat and clunky, and they're not always lined up perfectly. They're not always centered. Some are a little bit to the left or to the right. What I really don't like is the 7-0. I hate the giant gap between the period and the 7. I know that's partially because the number, the way the number is, but in this case, I just think you need a better font or just a manual decrease in that space between the 7 and the 0, the 7 and the period, because it's just such a huge gap. It looks terrible. And yeah, I just don't love how sometimes they can be kind of askewed or off center in that box where the grade's supposed to be. This is because what happens is CGC has all these labels pre-printed with that space blank, and then when your book is given a grade, they then print off all the information onto the templated label, and this can cause, printer errors and production errors, the same way comics do when covers get improperly cropped or cut, miswraps, things like that. It's just part of production, it's part of printing, and this is what happens on CGC labels. And I think that this could potentially be helped if they had a little less of such a clunky number, a clunky font, or if they actually printed out their labels all at one time. That would definitely help make these errors not as prevalent, if at all. So coming back to the comparison, the side by side, am I going to stop getting CGC grading? No. I love CGC. I like their service. For the most part, I like their label. I don't think it's ugly by any form. These kind of critiques on the CGC label through this video is more just to kind of show you the flaws in their design so that you can kind of come around to my thinking that this new CBCS label is really nicely designed. It's a nice label. I think they deserve kudos for the design. But like I said off the top, obviously they need to step up their game in other places and close that gap with CGC before people are really going to embrace them and start taking them extremely seriously when it comes to where they want to grade their comic books. So I'll just finish this analysis by showing you one last time this new CBCS label, but in a full scope of it in a slab with a comic book. Looking at it here, I think it just looks really good, and I think that 9/8 pops nicely. It's a really well designed label. It's a big step up from where they were, where I thought all their information really gets lost, especially the grade. So kudos to CBCS for this new redesign. I think you did a good job. Now go redesign other parts of your business, and maybe the comic community will come around. So I hope this little bit of analysis could help sort of base your opinion a little less on what you like personally from a grading company and more just look at the design itself. I think CBCS has done a really good job redesigning their label. Of course, like I said in the analysis, they're trying to compete with CGC. They're trying to get closer to the CGC label design. And personally, I think they've done that. They've given people essentially what I think they like in the CGC label. But unfortunately, because that bias exists, people don't see that as much, and that's what's creating a lot of this negativity. But of course, like I said off the top, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, and I think, of course, CGC is just going to continue chugging along, straight ahead, being the industry leader. But honestly, if I was CGC, I'd make a few changes to the label, to their label, get it. Take some of the good out of what CBCS has done and just make their label even better. I think that 10 grade label on black is really killer. And frankly, if I was going to get, like I said, if I was going to buy a book that was graded at a 10, I'd want it in the CBCS label. It's really, really cool. So I hope you liked the analysis of the labels, that you could kind of see where I'm coming from when I look at the design. And if you like this video, maybe you'll like some of my other videos, like this recent haul video, and maybe you'd like this other recent haul video. And until the next time, keep collecting.